Good morning, sir. Thanks for helping me out. I really appreciate the video you made. So this is my speed dungeon set. I've got the tiles flat against the grid. That way it's flush. I wasn't originally planning on this, and here in a minute I'll show you why. But on these grids, all you have to do is make 1/4 turn, and then they will slot down into each other so that there's only one wall slot between two grid systems. I'm not going to have this T slot and T peg system with the released version of Realm tiles. It's actually going to end up being a dovetail system. It just is going to work more efficiently, be more robust, and I think overall just be a better product for everybody. We will still have these, and although I don't necessarily like these, I like the modularity of the grid system and how it connects together. But all these are for is to finish off the grid wherever there isn't a wall slot at the edge if you want it. If you don't want it, you don't have to have it. Not everybody's going to be playing right all the way up to the edge of a giant grid system like I have here on my table. And so I imagine it's probably going to be something that people do on smaller play grids that they utilize. You had talked about a couple different options on the walls, and I completely understand. I've actually been working on this speed dungeon system for quite a while. This is the kind of the bullnose or rounded off version that you had showed in your video, and I think it's good. I think it looks decent. I don't like the divots along the walls on long linear pieces, but I think it looks pretty cool, and it doesn't work too bad. It works pretty good, but I don't ultimately think this is the one that I'm going to go with. Although this is convenient, it will be included in the speed dungeon pack. So if people want to build this way, they can. They'll have the option to. And to ease your mind, if you were concerned, I am going to open up the files and the system for the community to edit and modify and stuff like that. I do think that I'm going to do it behind a monthly subscription because to me that makes sense for all the hard work and effort that I've put into designing this system. There's nothing else like it, and I want people to enjoy it, but at the same time, I've really worked hard on it. And so these are a 45-degree cut on each side, and you just slot them down in there, and then you can put them anywhere that you want to. What I'm considering is making my door frames the same way. There's a couple different ways that I could do it. Obviously the door slots in there, and that's fine. There's a little bit of a gap. I wouldn't have to modify my doors at all, and we can go that route. However, on these doors, since the doors aren't permanently attached to a tile piece, well, when you don't do that on a doorway or an archway, you have to have this along the bottom, specifically with my design, because of where the wall tabs are and how they slot down into the system. If I just cut this and there's no lip at the bottom, then these tabs wouldn't exist. So there has to be this. So I can either do it to where there's a threshold at the base of every wall to where a miniature wouldn't be able to just slide right through. You would have to pick it up and over and slide it right through. But as it exists right now on my standard system, you slide this down in and you can slide right through a mini, even on the single door. Now, this is representative of a double door. It's not a 2-tile wide double door, which the 2-tile wide double doors will come in the future. But I wanted to keep the same archway profile on the double as on the single. So this is just this scaled up, essentially. And so that's why it didn't stretch to 2 tiles. Not that that's one of your concerns, but I figure I'm here, I might as well address it. So I have experimented with the flat tiles. Tiles on my main system that are almost flush. So these tiles right here are 8mm. These tiles are 6mm. Sorry, 5mm. And these are 6mm. I like the 5mm. I like the idea of everything being flush, but I can't figure out a way, or at least I haven't yet, of not having this in this type of scenario, to where there's a lip and you wouldn't be able to just slide your mini through because of the way that it's designed. Everybody else just lays flat walls on flat tiles, and they take up space. That's one thing that I wanted to alleviate, is taking up tile space. Another cool thing about this system that no one has realized. Imagine if this is a signpost and you can put it in between tiles. Imagine if it is a barrel, and instead of always having your static objects centered on tile or sitting on a tile, a chest, a box, a crate, a bookshelf, whatever it may be, I will have objects that have tabs on the bottom of them so that you can just slot them down wherever you want to in between the system, rather than always having to put it on a tile. No other system does that. It gives an entirely new plane of play that doesn't exist in any other system. So when you're walking around a dungeon and you've got all your static objects all over the place and they're getting knocked around because you've got your scene all built, well, it doesn't have to happen because you can slot things in. I wish that I could not have a panel or a ridge on the bottom there. I don't necessarily like it either, but in order to have the functionality that I want to have, then I think it's necessary. Now, if I made a door for this speed dungeon set in as low profile as possible, we could really even go lower than this. But the smaller thickness you have, or the more narrow that the grid is, the tabs don't work as well. And I've tested various thicknesses of grids, and I went with this route because I wanted to be able to have reversible tiles. So as you can see with the one that I sent you, I've got one wood grain on one side, and then I have cobblestone on the other. And I went ahead and printed this out, but it's kind of hard to get in and out. And so when it comes down to the speed that I want there to be, whenever you want to change a tile mid-game, you can have your giant grid already set up, and then you want to switch the scene. So it's cobblestone on one side, and then it's dirt on the other. Or it's grass on one side, and it's wood plank on the other. So then with the same bit of filament, you're getting two textures that you can utilize for mid-game swaps and stuff like that. So that's another reason why I had gone with the tile thickness. Now again, like I said, I could do a double-sided tile like this, but the smaller and smaller and smaller you go, the worse the functionality gets. And so I think 3mm is about as small as it needs to go. So 6mm in thickness of the grid overall, for durability and things actually not breaking and stuff like that. But then also, when it comes down to it, the functionality of the system and being able to utilize it that way. I think right now the grid system you have is an 8mm grid. So it's 4 and 4, 4 here and 4 here. And yes, you're all right. This is going to be utilized not only for the top of a pillar to have a seat for a pillar, so you can pick up the base grid and then you can climb with the system. So you got a base grid here, you have a base grid here, and you have these insert squares that insert down on the top of a grid, and then this fits right in the smaller square slot of the grid. And then you can just lift these off, and then you have your lower level dungeons and so on. All of these types of walls are going to be in the Speed Dungeon pack. So if people want to utilize them, they can utilize them the way that they want to. If they prefer one system over the other, they do the bull nose, they can do the bull nose. If they want to do the wedges, they can do the wedges. And if they want to do my Realm Tiles standard system, they can do that as well. And I also have these corners. So people can pick and choose what they want to do. They can pick and choose what they want to do. I still think I'm going to end up having these raised, and here's the reason why. Is if somebody's utilizing the Speed Dungeon set, so they've got a big they've got a big village set up, they're in town or they're in a castle, and then they go off up onto a different path. Then you pop out your Speed Dungeon set. You've got 2x2s, or you're walking through town and you go down a back alley and you find a basement and follow a bad guy in there, and all of a sudden you need an impromptu dungeon. Well, here's your dungeon crawler style system. Here's your Speed Dungeon style system. You just grab your 2x2s or your 4x4s, or even if you want to go all the way up to a 6x6, and then you grab your little parts and pieces and you can build your Speed Dungeon. However, I want this to be able to butt up to the edge of Realm Tiles standard. And so the grid needs to be the same thickness, and the tiles need to be at the same height, because I want the modularity for the main detailed system to have reversible tiles. Well, these tiles can be permanently attached, but I need the grid to be the same height, and I need the tiles to be the same height. And I also need the doorways to be able to operate and work. And the only way that I can do that is with this ridge on the bottom. So I wanted to send this to you as an example. I can accomplish everything that you want. If you wanted me to just build you a personal system that you wanted, and it was exactly the way that you wanted it to be, I could accomplish that. But I want both systems to work together, and I want this to be more convenient and easy. I think it's a great idea to have the tiles permanently attached. I think your wedge idea is great. I had already plans for this. I just hadn't finished it out yet because, again, my main focus was the main system. And the bull nose, I hadn't thought about that because I had thought about it, but I didn't want to do that because I don't like the way that this looks. And then the gaps in between whenever you put the single tiles together. This has always been my main focus of doing this. And the corner piece, you know what I mean? I think the corner piece is great too. The cool thing about this too, though, is that I've always had these 1x1 walls. I've got a ton of them already printed. And the reason why these 1-inch walls exist is because when you're on the outside of a building and you want to, like you're in a town or a village or something like that, and you want to see your buildings, well, at the outside, you want to see the outside wall. You want it to be full height because you want to have that village look. Now, some DMs, I guess, I've been a DM for years too, and I like highly detailed scenes. I think it's fun. I think it's cool. It's fun to build and stuff like that. When you go inside, obviously you can't see your character. But if you can take down a portion of the outside wall, then you can see your character. And maybe you leave the window wall, and maybe you leave the doorway wall. But as you go on and go forward, you just go around the perimeter of the building or one side, because all you need is a one side dollhouse view if it's 4x4 general store or something like that, you know? So these have always existed. I've got them in different sections of walls too. So you can have the lower 1-inch section, and then you have the 2-inch section to get you up to the standard height of my 3-inch walls. And these 3-inch walls, obviously you're not into castles, that's fine. You know, you do the dungeon crawler thing, that's cool. I want y'all to have what you want as well. But there's really nothing that builds like mine builds. It's all preset pieces, preset corners and stuff like that. And I want to be able to reuse every part and every piece in any way that you want to. If there's something that I missed, please let me know. But I want the speed dungeon set and this functionality to work hand in hand with the main system. So just like here, I've got this buttress wall. You can still take a standard wall and you can put it right over the top of it. So that's the main functionality, except for the only issue is just the ridges on the bottom. But from what I can tell, in all the time and energy and testing that I've done, is that they've got to exist, specifically for archways and doorways. Thanks for your time, sir. Let me know if you have any questions or if you need anything. I would love to just have a conversation and visit on a voice chat sometime. Also, if you haven't had a chance, I would greatly appreciate it if you would check out my YouTube channel. It's Shepherd Creations, and hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for your time.